Welcome, everyone, to the Brand Fortress HQ podcast. I'm your host, John Stojan, and today I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Matt Atkins and Matt Kaufman. And our guest is Leo Sgovio, an experienced Amazon seller and the founder of Spliced. Leo is an accomplished entrepreneur in the e-commerce and digital marketing sectors, known for his expertise in Google SEO, the Amazon algorithm, and influencer marketing, which I think we'll probably talk a little bit about today. With certifications in Google Ads, Adobe Analytics, and software development, Leo has built a robust skill set that propels him to success in the e-commerce industry. Leo, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, guys. It's a pleasure to be here. It's actually the first time that I'm on a podcast with three other people. That's kind of different.
We're kind of like a
first.
Yeah, a roundtable approach. Before we kind of dive into some of the topics here, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and kind of how you came to e-commerce and some of the other software projects that you're working on.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the space since, I remember selling a few items on eBay even before then, around actually, fun fact, which I probably never told, but my first ever e-commerce venture was a Santa website. I built this Santa site that was serving basically kids. And obviously the audience was kids that were sending letters to Santa during Christmas time. And I was making money with Google AdSense just by placing ads after kids were submitting their wishes. And then that kind of like taught me how to build my own websites and a little bit of coding, PHP to generate these scripts. But what I really dove deep into SEO and paid search was working with a family business in Canada starting 2007. I did that for until 2015, actually. When I joined the company, we were probably about 60 people. So I was pretty much in charge of optimizing the website, running all the PPC ads. And then we started working, the company started growing, working with Adobe Analytics, which was more of a custom premium analytics solution. And I learned how to implement that. I did that until 2015 when the company was about 1,200 employees big. Quite a big journey, big growth. It helped me learn a lot about the corporate world, which has pros and cons, of course. And here I am today. The tech part came along the way because I discovered to be very passionate about technology, and I was already doing Amazon when I met a gentleman in Hawaii at the first Illuminati Mastermind, if you guys remember, with Manny Coates and Guillermo from William 10. They hosted this event, and I met a gentleman called Casey Goss, which was the founder of Viral Launch at the time. And he asked me to join his company as the head of innovation, which I did because it was a good experience at the time. And that's what I also got to work actually hands-on with a real SaaS company. So the keyword research tool at the time was built by myself and together with the team, of course. But that was really more into the tech space versus just managing e-commerce and digital marketing.
Okay. Well, and I want to make sure that, we get some good insights on kind of both sides of those spaces. So I guess I'll start on the e-commerce side. One of the things that you mentioned in the questionnaire that we sent over was that sellers lose the battle because they don't know the tools available in Seller Central. And I think this is one of those things that, a lot of sellers could learn from, and it's kind of, what I put in the easy win bucket. So with that said, what are there any tools that kind of come top to your mind that you feel like are really overlooked by sellers?
Yeah, look, I think Amazon lately did a good job at providing us tools that we didn't have before. The search query performance report, all the brand analytics. We have data right now that we didn't have a few years ago. The thing is that the data that is there today is still not clear, right? You have to go from tool to tool in order to understand, and you end up building your own dashboards. But that's what I think majority of the gold is actually found today. I was in Prague a couple of weeks ago, and we were trying to understand the reason why one of my ASINs wasn't performing as well as he used to. And I was just chatting with a friend, Mansoor, from Incrementum Digital, and he shared with me actually a very interesting dashboard that he built in Google Looker Studio, which brings data in from brand analytics at the ASIN level and the brand level. But the way that it was built, it allowed me to actually found and dig into the issues that I was having with the ASIN, which was caused by the fact that the ASIN was categorized as an adult ASIN, even though it was actually not an adult ASIN. But those are things that, without really digging into the Amazon tools, I wouldn't been able to find. And so when I talk about the tools that Amazon is providing, I think, between brand analytics right now, the search query, performance report, even when we look at the inventory tools that they give, the performance reports, like those are all tools that give you more visibility into what's going on into your brand. And the problem is that a lot of sellers today are kind of like looking over them. They don't spend enough time understanding what's inside Seller Central, what other competitors are doing, what other sellers are perhaps sharing on social media, or even like what other software companies are building. And they don't realize that they have access to a lot of data that can really help them understand a lot more about their business because it's coming straight from Amazon. So that's what I refer to when I say guys should spend a lot more time understanding what's really in their backyard, in their neighbor's backyard. Does it make sense? Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I mean, I think that's absolutely true. I also think, though, that a part of that is, let's say, quintessential Amazon, right? Like, I think most of the time when Amazon gives us data, they give it to us in a way that almost presents it in the least usable format that let's say a regular person, like off the street, like a lot of sellers don't have a lot of background, in business and finance and data analytics and all that sort of thing, right? And so Amazon, they give us data, but they always provide it in such a way that just a regular Joe is never, they can't make heads or tails out of it. And so I think what happens with a lot of sellers is that they look at it and it just looks like gibberish. And so they're like, okay, well, I can't do anything with this. So I guess I'm going to go this other way and find other ways, that I can, make, advancements in my business. And so I guess what I would take from that is, A, there is good data there to be used. B, you're going to have to take some time to either A, figure out how to analyze it within Amazon's system and understand how they're presenting it, or B, find somebody, developer, whatever, to build out some custom dashboards for you, or use some service that builds out custom dashboards that pulls that data in and presents it in a way that you can understand it, because you need to be looking at the data. It is valuable. But if you don't understand it the way it's presented, then it's not helping you at all. But you got to put the time in.
Yeah, and I think I agree 100% here, Mike. And I think this is one of the categories actually where we're still lacking innovation from a software perspective. Again, we have great tools when it comes to PPC management, when we have to keyword research, but when it comes to analytics and understanding data, I'm afraid there's still an opportunity there for those that want to, get into the space, but lack of a proper comprehensive tools. You have some tools out there like Seller Board that have been around for a while, they do analytics. But when it comes to really understanding what is it that caused the drop in ranking, is it a node change? Perhaps something was flagged on my listing. Maybe another ASIN or other competitor came into the space and they're stealing some of my sales, market shares. Like these are things that I'm afraid is hard to find, like you said, and you need out there. And what's interesting, when we put together this report, we found that basically we got flagged as an adult product. So the ASIN was moved from a category to another twice. And the first time the ASIN came back and most of the keywords came back. The second time took a little longer. But every time this happened, the ASIN got a hit. And it's like a boxer gets hit a couple of times, eventually it's going to go down. And if you're not fast enough at responding to that change, you might lose market shares over time and you might never be able to recover. And then recently, I think yesterday, someone was saying in a group, they're having success by refreshing the ASIN, by calling in Amazon, getting to the right team, the catalog team. Eventually, someone knows what you're talking about. They refresh your ASIN and, probably you're able to fix that problem that way. However, what we found was that we were able to recover most of the keywords that were already ranking on page one before the node change. And so we're doing a test right now based on these findings. We're playing with PPC only on some keywords that we know were already ranked on page one before. And we are able to slowly move the needle one by one. And so we're validating this theory. If this is true, that the keywords that before the change were actually are easier to gain back, then we're going to focus on those first, because eventually you will start getting more sales and then the whole listing recovers. Right. But unless you do this type of analysis, you're not going to find out what really caused that drop or how to recover an ASIN that is losing sales.
Yeah. Well, and I do want to, and I agree with what both you guys are saying as far as, like, especially search query reports is what comes to my mind as far as unless you have a tool like what you're describing, it can be really hard to parse all that data. And especially it's not helpful in how Amazon gives you that data right now. I know they're working on improving that, but I don't want listeners to be discouraged from that in the sense of, I do think that there are other tools, a couple that come to my mind that fit in there that Amazon gives us is if you look at, like your returns, if you look at like voice of customer and why customers return things, 80% of them are probably things that are quite frankly outside of your control, are going to be very frustrating when you read them. But there are 20% that are within your control. And by adjusting the packaging or what's on your listing or the product itself, you can prevent some of those reviews. And you don't need to have, really analyze a bunch of data in order to take some action items away from that. So I feel like that tool, within Seller Central is really good. And the other one that we've started to use a lot more, and I think it's getting a lot more powerful, is the Product Opportunity Explorer. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of data that Amazon has put into that where you can see, category and trends and also your competitors' research that I feel like really has not gotten the attention that it deserves yet. But it's probably closer to search analytics, and there's a lot of data there. So it's a little bit harder to parse, what's actionable out of that. But there are, definitely some tools, like you said, where if you spend a little bit of time, you can have a big advantage over your competitors that aren't looking at that data.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think it obviously depends on the use case, right? Like what problem you're trying to solve. If you have an amazing product, you're ranking on page 1, sales are just not there. Yeah, it could be that by digging into reviews and understanding more about the voice of customers, the feedback that they leave, you are able to optimize and perform better by fixing issues with your product, 100%. Over the past 8-9 years, majority of sellers always run into the issue that they launch a product, they have a successful launch, 90 days later, or perhaps more. Sometimes, I got approached by sellers that have been selling for 2 years, 3 years, and they've always been doing well, and then all of a sudden they lose rankings. And they try to figure out, how do I get my sales back? Especially when you have products selling 300, 400, 500 units a day, and now you go back to 100. Like you have a team, now you have people that you have to pay salaries. Like, what do you do to bring that business back? And look, what I'm talking about is actually like, I got this report, this template for free from Incrementum Digital. I think they have it online somewhere. And then I use the Chrome extension, which is also free, that helps you download all the search query performance reports at a weekly basis, pretty much automatically. So you download everything. You don't have to go through this process manually. You import it into this Google Sheet. It connects with Google Data Studio or Looker Studio, and that's it. You just look at the data in a pretty way and have a little bit of understanding of what's going on. So it's not that complex. It's just a matter of spending an hour or so to collect the data and then putting it all together.
As long as you have the template that analyzes it, that properly.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can understand it. Yeah.
Right. The Chrome extension, for example, I'm looking at my desktop right now. I can give the name to the listeners. I think it's called Seller Central Utilities. There's a guy that posted about this on LinkedIn, and then he was just giving it away for free, and then it's awesome. Like, it automates the whole process.
Very nice.
I didn't know that it existed, so that'll be something.
I guess we've got some action items to take away from this podcast, along with listeners as well. That's fantastic.
You don't have to wait until the end. You just go on.
What I love is that it takes something that is scary to most sellers. They know that the search query performance report is there. They don't know what to do with the data. They see Mansour posting on LinkedIn about this really cool template and shows like this pretty graph of like, this is what to do. If your impression shares this and your purchase shares this, these are the steps to take. Like, that seems overwhelming to a lot of sellers, and they don't really dig in more enough to know. Like, you sat with someone at an event, and we talked about this just on the last or a couple of episodes ago, like getting in front of other sellers and having these face-to-face conversations. Like, just that one conversation for you probably paid for the whole trip that you took to Prague, because you learned something, you saw data that proved, well, this is why my ASIN has lost market share. And it's something that anybody can do. You just described how to a tool that automates the downloading of the search query performance. You also talked about this template that you can import all this data in for free and see all of these beautiful graphs. Like, that is so valuable, but you have to be in communication with sellers to be able to find this kind of stuff out. And that's one of the things that we talk about a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the value of community is by far the best thing that someone can invest in or can do in this space, because there's so much that changes on a daily basis. And I think it is always useful to be able to reach out to someone or sit down with someone at the conference and then figure something out. If there was one thing that I could take away, and normally I go as a speaker, right? So I try always to help other people. But when you take something away, it's it feels just your time was worth it, for sure. So that, for example, for me, it was very important, because sometimes we just overlook things and we think we have the business under control, and then you just lose, I don't want to say touch, but you just lose focus for a second. And it's important to brainstorm with other people to figure out what is it that I'm missing out here.
Because when you're walking into, that's a valuable piece, because otherwise you don't ever get the information. So out of curiosity, Leo, that template that you used to bring that data into, is that a publicly available template, or was that something that was more privately shared for you?
No, it's publicly available. I think it's called Supa. By the way, for the listeners here, I'm not affiliated with Incrementum Digital. I just, they're a great company. They're doing a phenomenal job, and Mansoor is someone I really look up to. And he was kind enough to share this template with me, but I think he also shared it on LinkedIn. It's called Supa.
He did.
Yeah, exactly, man.
He updated it, and he also they ended up putting it on their website somewhere to download for free. So I remember that post very well. It was one of the first that I saw go as viral as it did, but he ended up putting it on their website. Super, super cool template.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I can see the link.
Be sure to look it up.
Sure, you can put it in the show notes after, but the link is out there. So you can use, like I said, this template with a Chrome extension, and you have your own analytics dashboard.
Yeah,
Great.
we'll actually make sure that both those tools, the links to those are in the show notes. So anybody who's listening, they can have a quick reference. They don't even have to do the Google search. We'll do that heavy lifting for them on that one. And they can save that for a different tool in Seller Central.
Super.
I do want to pivot a little bit to, one of the other things that topics on the list, which was talking about acquiring new reviews, because I think, especially now, looking at brands that are trying to differentiate themselves. There's a lot of competition. Obviously, reviews is a big part of this. I think most of the listeners, that have some experience with this know, like, okay, well, some of that's based on sales velocity. I'm only going to get, a certain percentage that are going to leave reviews. And they're probably using a basic tool, something like Helium 10 to kind of automate that request process. But outside of that, are there other things that are kind of in your framework when you think about how to keep acquiring those new reviews to strengthen that product?
So, John, this is a very gray area, right? I think a lot of sellers, speakers, so normally people that talk about this topic have kind of like steered away over the past few years since Amazon changed the TOS. I think it was late 2021. But, I always like to talk about this, because this is actually what I'm afraid this business is all about. We see on a regular basis on Amazon sellers manipulating reviews. I'm actually thinking to create a series on my own Instagram page with reels where I actually expose sellers that I come across that are doing this. Just recently I came across one that I think they had something like 20,000 reviews. And it was one of the few products with so many reviews. And I was just about to buy it when I read one review that was about something else. And this is one of the, I think, the black hat techniques that a lot of sellers are still adopting, where they either merge or they try to find a very old ASIN with a lot of reviews and they attach it to a new one. So, for sellers out there that are struggling from a review competition, number of reviews perspective, right, with regards to the competition out there, it's very important to understand how sellers are getting reviews and how fair they're playing. Because if you're competing with Chinese that are getting, tons of reviews attached to their listing just by merging with other zombie ASINs, they call them, then, I would probably try to find another niche, because these are niches that are always going to be either hard to compete in, or I know these sellers probably won't last long, but the problem is that the way the Chinese play is a totally different game. They have thousands of burner accounts. And so they probably won't leave that niche because they know there's so much money in that niche. They're always going to try to figure out a way to get more reviews.
Yeah.
I've really heard recently a lot of really good stories about using Vine still for reviews. Some sellers are not even doing any giveaways, anything like that. They're just going with Vine, few reviews, and they're successful. But a lot of them are still using inserts, not asking for a review straight after the QR code scan. They're nurturing the customer through a warranty, the type of flows that we know, the funnels that we know. Yep. And then eventually asking for feedback or review down the road. I give an example. I think this was a while back, of a company that took it to a whole different level. An electronic device that asked the customer to download an app. And eventually, after three weeks from the day I purchased that product, I was asked for a review on the actual mobile app. So that was, in my opinion, like mind-blowing, because I've never seen that before. And, there are other sellers that are leveraging the social media channels, such as Instagram or TikTok. And they normally reach out to creators through these platforms and then eventually get reviews that way, which I see personally being a safer way. Probably hard to scale because you have to message a lot of people to get a decent amount of reviews. Yeah. But these are the ways that I see still most sellers adopting to generate constantly reviews besides the ones coming in organically.
So Leo, what do you think of discussing the topic of continuing to bring in those reviews? Obviously, the quality and the actual rating of the review matter. What do you think about, how do I want to pose the question? Quality of review matters, right? So even though a 5-star review is helpful, if it's a 1-sentence review with no image, no video or anything like that, it has far less weight with a consumer who might actually read the reviews than one that's longer and more detailed, has some pictures, video, those sort of things. Are there some things that you think that sellers should or could be doing to improve the quality of the reviews that they're receiving versus just simply the quantity of reviews they're receiving?
Yeah, Mike, I think it comes down to how they're getting these reviews to begin with. If they're just getting approached through the traditional Amazon channels, the button that we just press in Seller Central to request a review, that's just a template that comes from Amazon asking for a review. And so you can really, you can't do much there. You don't have control over what is being asked to the customer. It's hard for you to say, hey, I would appreciate if you can post a picture, right? You cannot do that. And so sellers that are still playing in that gray area where they send perhaps an email, follow-up, or SMS, so it has to be done post-purchase. You need to have some sort of connection with the customer. Then it's a little bit different, right? It's easier to ask the customer, hey, we're trying to build an amazing company, an amazing brand on social media. We will love, for example, we're doing something like that. It also depends on the product. That we sell card games. And so for us, it's easier to say, hey, share your moments with us, and we will reward you with a gift card. We're going to choose the best, the funniest video once a month, and then share it, give you a pair of Apple AirPods, like things like that. You incentivize that way your customers. But otherwise, if you don't have the one-on-one relationship, the one-to-one relationship, then it's hard to do.
I mean, obviously, we talk a lot on this podcast about that one-to-one relationship and trying to build, that engagement with the customer post-purchase. So I think it's a valuable piece. I don't know if, John or Matt, if you've got any thoughts on that. I mean, obviously, we've got kind of our standard answer, which is just make sure that you're doing something post-purchase. But, any other things that you think you could be doing with customers that would enhance the reviews that they're getting?
I guess we've talked about it a little bit before, but the two things that come to mind, I mean, the first one is you talked about once you have that one-to-one connection, rather than asking for a review right away. And you mentioned this, Leo, you want to build that relationship. I think it's super important to make sure that customers essentially got what they wanted, and to make sure that, that they don't have any questions or any problems with the product. Now what you're doing is you're essentially preventing 1-star reviews, which is more powerful than than getting a 5-star review. So, and providing better customer service. Cause I think everybody's ordered something off of Amazon. Once it arrived in the mail, it wasn't exactly what they wanted, or, humans are part of the process. So mistakes happen. So being able to fix that really strengthens your brand and can prevent those 1-star reviews. And then I think the other thing is just to keep in mind, Leo, you mentioned about, most customers, if they do leave a review, they're just clicking kind of that standard template where it's a 1 through 5 review, and all you're getting is the star rating. You're not actually getting any comments behind that. Again, if you have that one-on-one connection, I think in a lot of cases it's an education piece where, really prompting customers and having them be a part of the brand of like, hey, a really powerful review looks like, a star rating plus a description plus some sort of, picture or video, and just letting them know. So those customers that really are, huge fans of your brands are really willing to go those extra steps if they know that has a lot of benefit to you. So I would just think about those 2 additional points on what you talked about, Leo.
Yeah, I love the first one, trying to prevent 1-star reviews. I think playing defense there is a critical strategy, and it's one of my favorite ones. In fact, we always try to get 1-star reviews removed because I call it like, you buy time in business, in my perspective. If you try to get rid of 1-star reviews, you can just play longer. So you're buying lives, right? So that's strategy number 1. And today, you have a tool actually available on the Amazon Seller Central that allows you to contact customers that have left a 1-star review and try to refund them or give them a replacement. Like before Amazon, there was no such tool, right? So now you have, I guess, one more opportunity to get rid of 1-star reviews. The number 2, obviously, is getting more reviews, more 5-star reviews. The problem there is that as buyers, as consumers, we always tend to leave a review when we're pissed. And that review is so long, and like we have videos and this is the best review ever, but it's negative, right? So in case where the opposite happens, where you want to leave a review, very rarely we see those nice reviews that have more weight, Michael, like you said, with pictures and videos. And that's why I think it's important to start building a list, to start building some sort of funnel that is compliant, but eventually leads to that relationship, that trust between the brand and the customer, where you can approach them with a better message, with a message that is not necessarily against the TOS, but you're like, hey, look, we'll really appreciate your feedback. And by the way, if you can share, the way you use your tool or this type of, whatever stretch bands, it will actually help our customers learn more about our product. I think that we're playing in a very fine space there without necessarily violating the TOS, but that will probably lead to much better reviews.
Well, when you do the hard work and you build an audience like that, my story is piggybacking on with someone's existing audience, and I've done that a couple of different times to launch a brand. But when you do that hard work, whether it's make a relationship with an audience or build an audience through post-purchase things, a lot of other things become a lot easier. When I partnered with the Facebook group owner in the group that we launched our products in, we made them a part of creating those products. Like we were selling a lot of Me Too things that Chinese manufacturers were selling direct for a whole lot cheaper than we wanted to sell it. But we had a group of people that felt like they were part of something bigger. Like they would step over those Chinese competitors to find our brand and pay premium because, hey, I got to help choose this product. Like I got to help choose this brand name. And I know that not everyone has an audience to leverage like that, but if you're doing the right things that we teach and, with the people that we bring on the podcast are teaching, and you're doing that, you're growing that audience, which then you can use as an asset. People naturally went and left left reviews, and they left unboxing reviews, and they left pictures because they were excited about the brand. And we created that excitement in a closed group that we then sent to Amazon. And and we've talked about how someone would buy one of our products in the group, they would do an unboxing. So then you'd have a whole nother couple hundred people that saw the product, and now they're going to Amazon and searching for our brand name. So doing that hard work of doing post-purchase things, or doing the hard work of finding another audience that you can piggyback on, pays dividends on all of these things that we're talking about.
Yeah, Matt, I love it. There is a friend of mine, you guys most likely know him, Tomer Rabinovich. He's working on the new Amazon brand, and I think listeners should pay attention to what he's doing to build a brand and to build a list. And that follows exactly what Matt just mentioned here. He blew my mind when it comes to innovating to deliver this, what he called the 6 stars experience, which leads customers to leave a review because of the experience that they just had, going that extra mile, giving an extra gift they didn't buy. Everything that we've been talking about for the past 6-7 years, he's implementing in the next brand. And I think he's doing this live. I think everything that is building is documenting the whole thing publicly. And so if some sellers are interested in understanding how can we apply this concept, I think Tomer is doing a good job there.
That's great.
Well, and I think that connects really well, what Matt, you were talking about, and Leo, into, I'm curious kind of what you're working on right now with Splicer and influencer marketing.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about it while Matt was talking, because Spliced was built with that goal in mind, to build your own audience, your own network, so that you don't have to rely on these pay-to-play platforms or strategies. The goal there is to leverage the creators network that is huge today between TikTok and Instagram, like YouTube, and find people that resonate with your brand so that you can build your own network, right, of brand ambassadors. These are people that not only will be super happy to buy your product, promote your product, but they will always be ready to help your brand launch more products, give you feedback on new product ideas, new packaging, everything, right? And they're growing with you because they're getting paid not only for each video they're posting, but also for commissions on the sales that they're generating for your brand. So I think that's probably the next move or the next big step that sellers should take in order for them to have a little bit more control over their business without necessarily having a team that is there, doing this 24/7, or having a bigger team, because it's pretty much very, easy to implement. Michael got a sneak peek the other day on Spliced. And so that's the goal there, right? Because today I'm afraid that these creators, especially on TikTok, they're not realizing this yet, because the growth is so, it looks like this hockey stick, right? They're getting so many new followers, but they're not seeing how many they're actually losing. And what I see is that this audience, these people watching content, they're already complaining about content being just, another Amazon product, right? Before they were just making content to entertain. Now they're making content to make money. And so when the audience is going to start to disengage, then it's a problem, right? Because these videos will be no longer watched as much or no longer be as entertaining. And so on the creator side of things, they need to pay attention. They better off partnering up with brands long-term instead of working with a different brand, probably in the same niche. Because, if you are building a channel on, automotive, that's what you know. And so you're probably doing one thing right now. You're working with a bunch of different automotive brands to promote a bunch of different products. But in my opinion, what they should be doing is work with one brand, find a good brand that resonates with our audience, probably has a good brand, resonates with them, of course, and just work with them. Push their brand, become partners, get a good affiliate deal going. And for a brand, you find 3, 4, 5 creators like this, I think you're good, right? I think that's the difference here between who's doing this just to create UGC content and who's actually leveraging the opportunity to build a proper network.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I mean, that whole idea of partnering with the creator as not just another affiliate, but as an actual partner, in the brand, and helping them build their audience, based on that, and not, as you said, turning away a lot of their viewers because they're promoting, 100 different products, every other video is that. When it's a single brand, I think you can avoid that. The other thing that I was going to mention, and we've kind of talked about this a little bit, Leo, is that, I think layering on that extra piece, which is because you don't know which influencers are going to end up working out, which ones aren't, which ones you're going to be able to partner with, which ones you don't. But the one thing that's nice is that if you use one of the newer tools, like say Pixel Me, or you turn me on actually to a product called Switchy, which you can get through AppSumo, which is, it doesn't do everything that Pixel Me does, but it does the one thing that Pixel Me does that I want to talk about, which is pixeling all of those individuals who are clicking through from those influencers to say Amazon or wherever you're sending them. If you can pixel those individuals, now they're on your remarketing list. So it's like, yes, you can work with those influencers, but what about the influencers who did send traffic, but maybe they didn't buy, right? Like, so we sell pool products. We might have, well, for instance, we're running, something right now. There's a lot of clicks that come through that don't result in a purchase. There may be many of the influencers that are in this program that we end up not working with long-term because the conversion rate wasn't terrific, or whatever. But it's clear that everybody who clicked through is at least in some way, shape, or form related to the audience that we're looking for. If we can pixel all of those, even though we didn't get a sale the first time around, we can remarket to them on Facebook and Google and TikTok and wherever we like. So if you're going to go down this road, and you should, of trying to work with these influencers and using a tool like Spliced or something like that, make sure that you're building into that process this pixeling opportunity so that you can remarket to them later. And that'll make the dollars that you're spending on the front end for these influencers way more valuable on the back end because you can keep remarketing.
And I also want to just throw in there, as someone who has done this for a few brands as part of marketing on Amazon, how and now I haven't seen Spliced yet, but I can tell you without doing this with a tool, how challenging this is when you start looking at finding those influencers, reaching out to them, developing that relationship, getting them to actually, post content, and kind of sifting through to find, like you said, those 4 or 5 that you're going to build a long-term relationship with. If you're doing this kind of the old-fashioned, manual way, there's a ton of obstacles in your way that I feel like have been put in the last couple of years. I mean, one that comes to my mind that, we ran into was, we could find those influencers on like Instagram, but if we didn't have some sort of, relationship with them or something like that, and you DM them, you might have the best intentions in the world, but there's a other box for, direct messages on Instagram that nobody looks at. So, our response rate on those were essentially 0. So in order to be effective at this, I mean, you can do it the old fashioned way, but I feel like having a tool is so much more powerful than just trying to, reach out to influencers and find a couple of those diamonds in the rough.
Yeah. That's still an issue today because you have a limited number of DMs, first of all, that you can send, and they do fall under a different bucket. So we normally reach out via email. And then when we don't get a reply, we follow up, and then we follow up again. We do see if obviously the creator has seen that email or not. There are multiple channels that you should try, obviously, to reach out to an influencer. And, doing that manually is very hard. You need some sort of automation in place. But, the thing is that there are still a lot of sellers today that are doing this old school, the old fashioned way, like you mentioned. And what, tools help you do is just scale when you figure out what works, right? Any strategy is just as effective as the person behind it or the effectiveness of it, right? So the reason why I built Splice is because I needed a way to automate things and scale what was already working before. For example, getting reviews, we were getting it through Instagram, DMing a bunch of people, but not just DMing them, we were approaching them in a different way. Commenting first, right? Building the relationship, like you mentioned. And then, when you send them a message, they're going to click on it. So, when you figure something out that works manually, that's when you perhaps use a tool that automates the process, and then you can scale, right? So this is what we're trying to do. One unique feature, and I don't want to promote Sprice so much because I like people to just play with it themselves, is that like, we built in this MLM component so that when you find those 4, 5, 10 influencers that really work well for you, they can invite more people like themselves to join your network. And so if you do this right, with the right incentive or with the right affiliate commissions, you wind up with a network of 100, 200 people in a few months. But all you did was finding the first 5 or 10 through software that were actually good. And so that's what I think software is good for. And to Michael's point, when you fire pixels and this audience is engaged because they were actually watching that video on how to replace a car tire, for example, using a specific tool, these people are interested in that segment. Remarketing with a new product or reaching out to them for whatever the case is, as long as it's you're trying to target that audience with a remarketing pixel is the easiest thing and the cheapest probably way to get their attention. So 100%, I think every seller should, and if they're sending traffic from outside of Amazon to Amazon, they should definitely pixel and start building an audience, because you never know when you're going to need that. But you do need people to sell something to.
And even if you use the remarketing just to build a list, like you send them to some free offer, that you can get them on an email list or something. So once you got them on the email list, then, you've got them as long as you give them good content and you take care of them. So the remarketing is just the first step of that top of funnel, to get them on your list. And then you're building out, like Matt said, then you're building that pre-audience that then, you can market to and sell the product and funnel it down the line.
So for the listeners out there that want to build kind of that closer connection with their customers and definitely have, traffic that they can drive, from off Amazon onto Amazon, because I think most people understand all the benefits of that at this point. What would you give as an action item for like a good place for them to start with that process based on kind of the discussion we've had today?
Assuming that every niche is different, the first thing I will do personally is studying my competition, seeing what they're doing. Like I would buy probably the first page of products to see how they're acquiring today customers, how they're building their own list. Assuming that anyway, Amazon is the play that we're aiming to, the game we're aiming to play for the next 2 years. Like if we're doing D2C or our intent is to go on TikTok shops, that's a different strategy, right? But if I want to win on Amazon for the next 2 years, I would buy my competitors' products, see how they're acquiring reviews, how they are establishing relationship with their customers, and obviously the top players. Because Amazon changes every day, and being on top of the game is crucial in this industry. So trying to figure out what is it that is working is the number one thing. We know that majority of sellers, we can find this information pretty much on everywhere. They are, I'm talking about sellers that are winning. They are in some ways building these post-purchase funnels that lead to warranty or opt-in for an extra, whatever the case is. There are so many different scenarios. And so being able to have that in place is already the first thing that a seller that doesn't have it should be doing. But I don't think there is one tool today out there that allows you to have this funnel in place in a simple way, because it starts with obviously putting an insert in the product, whether it's a QR code. And so I don't want to complicate things for listeners here. I think, keeping things simple has always worked the best for me. I have always had one QR code in my inserts and one phone number that people could text to, so that they could either text to opt in for whatever the offer was or scan the QR code. And obviously the URL, that's a no-brainer. But I always give the option to opt in with multiple. Someone might not be on their phone at the moment. They might be on their desktop, so they can type in the URL, or if they are on their phone, they don't know how to scan the QR code, they can just text. So give always the options. But then when it comes to the funnel, I like to keep it simple. One of the best ones that I've seen, and this guy told me they had collected 30 phone numbers, was simply a landing page where they were offering another complimentary product. They weren't asking for a review, just enter information here, we're giving you this complimentary product. Let's say you're selling a gaming chair, you're giving away a free gaming mouse. And the way they were doing it, they were actually shipping it from AliExpress. So the gaming mouse the cost is just $1, right? A couple of dollars from AliExpress. They're buying the gaming chair. They bought it probably for $150 on Amazon. And so, it's a complementary product. If they are buying that product, they're probably going to use a gaming mouse, and that's it. Simple, cheap, and that gets you the customers in, right? Then whatever you want to do with them after, it's up to you. If you want to ask for a review once, they haven't returned, for example, the gaming chair, or offer them a new product. But that's a simple one that I can think of. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't know any tools out there because of the Amazon TOS changes that actually allows you to do this with a couple of clicks.
Yeah, it's not simple. It does take some work in order to set up that sort of process. So part of the reason that, again, we see the same thing, we do have a free course that we offer as part of Brand Fortress HQ that kind of walks people through this process. And I think the other thing that you said that I just really want to double click on, which is there's not a one size fits all for every category, every brand, every product. So that's part of what we kind of built in that as well, is like, okay, here's some ideas and where to apply them depending on what category you're in, and what sort of product it is, in order to, build that incentive in the funnel and everything behind it to work for your brand. So we've covered a lot of ground today, Leo. For folks that are interested in, learning more about you and kind of, what you're up to, where's a good place for them to find you?
Yeah, you guys can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Leo Sgovio. And I have my own website, leosgovio.com, where you can, I don't post a lot on my own website, but there is, if you're interested in SEO, actually, like Amazon SEO, I am posting more content about that, and we'll probably soon release a course actually on it, especially now that Amazon changed they didn't change. They updated the algorithm with Cosmo. We didn't touch on this, but it's a very interesting topic. I spent a lot of time reading the patents, and I decided to put something together which I think is going to be very useful for those that really want to dive deep into understanding what makes my product rank and how can I improve my rankings just by optimizing my listings, my titles, playing with this fancy word that everyone is using. It's semantic SEO, right? So that's the stuff that I love to work on. So you can find more on that on my website.
Okay. Well, it sounds like we might have to have you back for. We'll have to have you back another time to talk about Cosmo, because I think that's and kind of the changes that are happening there, because I think there's a lot happening there as well. But I think this is a lot that we've given to our listeners for today. Leo, thank you so much for being so generous on these topics and making the time for the podcast today. We appreciate having you on.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate being here. And anytime, I'd love to talk about Cosmo next.
Awesome.
Thanks, Leo.